The boy who spat on me in high school applied for a job where he would report directly to me. His name appeared in my inbox on a Tuesday morning, attached to a resume that was almost annoyingly impressive. Senior operations role. Strong leadership background. Clean employment history until the last year. Good references. The kind of candidate recruiters get excited about before they remember that human beings are more than bullet points. I was drinking coffee at my desk when I saw his name. For a few seconds, I just stared at it. Not because I was confused. Not because I didn't recognize him. I recognized him immediately. Some names do not age. They sit somewhere in your body, untouched by time, waiting for the wrong Tuesday morning to come back. His name was Evan Whitaker. In high school, everyone loved Evan. Teachers loved him because he smiled when adults were watching. Coaches loved him because he was athletic and came from a family that donated generously to the school. Parents loved him because he wore pressed shirts, had perfect hair, and said things like "yes ma'am" when he knew someone important was listening. Girls liked him because he was handsome. Boys followed him because he was rich. And people like me learned to keep our heads down because Evan did not need a reason to be cruel. He was cruel because he could be. I was not his only target. I want to be clear about that. Evan had a way of deciding who mattered and who did not, and if you fell into the second group, he treated you like you were something stuck to the bottom of his shoe. The difference was that other people learned how to stay out of his way. I never quite managed it. Maybe it was because my locker was 3 doors down from his junior year. Maybe it was because I wore thrift store sweaters and carried library books like armor. Maybe it was because I was quiet in a way that made loud people want to prove they could make me flinch. Whatever the reason, Evan noticed me. And once he noticed me, he made sure I never forgot it. He called me names in the hallway, not creative ones, just the kind designed to make everyone around you laugh before they even understand why they are laughing. He knocked my books out of my hands and said I should thank him for helping me learn how to bend over. He spat into my hair once outside the gym and told everyone I had probably come to school that way. One afternoon during junior year, he hit me hard enough in the shoulder that I dropped my lunch tray. It was not a dramatic punch. There was no movie scene gasp, no teacher rushing in, no moment where the room went silent and justice finally arrived. It was a shove disguised as an accident. My tray hit the floor. Milk splashed across my jeans. Evan looked down at me and smiled like I had performed a trick for him. "Careful," he said. "You're always so clumsy." The cafeteria laughed. I laughed too, because sometimes your body chooses survival before your dignity gets a vote. That was the thing people never understood about bullying. They imagined it as one big, terrible event. One moment you could point to and say, "There, that was when he hurt me." But it was not one moment. It was the hallway going quiet when I walked past his group. It was checking my chair before I sat down. It was changing which bathroom I used because I once heard his friends laughing outside the door. It was flinching when someone said my name too loudly. It was going home and telling my mother that school was fine because I did not know how to explain that nothing was fine. But nothing was bad enough for anyone to save me. I did try once. There was a guidance counselor named Mrs. Calhoun, and I still remember the color of her office walls because I stared at them instead of looking at her face. Pale yellow. Supposed to be calming, probably. It was not. I told her Evan was bothering me. I did not tell her everything. I left out the spit. I left out the names that still made me feel dirty. I left out how he once leaned close to me in the library and whispered that nobody would care if I disappeared. I only told her enough. Mrs. Calhoun listened with the expression adults use when they have already decided the problem is your sensitivity and not someone else's cruelty. "Evan can be a little intense," she said. Intense. That was the word she chose. Then she leaned back in her chair and asked, "Is it possible he likes you?" I remember blinking at her. I remember thinking, if that is what liking someone looks like, then I hope nobody ever loves me. But I said nothing. She told me she would keep an eye on it. Adults love saying that when they want you to leave their office. Nothing changed after that, except Evan somehow found out I had spoken to her. The next day, a folded piece of paper was taped to my locker. Inside, in blocked letters, someone had written, "Snitches don't get invited to anything." I did not get invited to anything anyway. By senior year, I had learned the rules. Do not react. Do not complain. Do not give him tears if anyone is watching. If you cry, do it in your car. If you panic, do it in the bathroom. If you want to survive, become boring. Then, around the middle of 11th grade, Evan disappeared for a while. There were rumors. His parents pulled him out. He got into trouble. He transferred to some private program. Nobody knew for sure, and because he was Evan Whitaker, nobody asked too loudly. The school became quieter after he left. Not good. Not healed. Just quieter. I finished high school, moved several states away for college, and did what a lot of people like me do. I built a life so far from the place that hurt me that I could pretend distance was the same thing as closure. It was not, but distance helped. I changed my hair. I learned how to speak in meetings without apologizing first. I stopped laughing when I was uncomfortable. I built a career in human resources, which still feels ironic if I think about it too long. People assume HR is paperwork and policies. Sometimes it is. But the part I cared about was the part nobody notices when everything is going well. The quiet part. The part where you learn how power behaves when it thinks nobody will challenge it. I got good at seeing patterns. A manager who only promoted men but always had a reason. A director who called women emotional when they disagreed. A senior employee who made jokes right at the edge of what he could deny later. I learned how to document. I learned how to ask the second question after someone gave me their rehearsed answer. I learned that charisma is not character and confidence is not leadership. Eventually, I became a senior member of the HR division for a mid-sized company with a reputation people actually respected. We were not perfect. No company is. But we cared about culture in a way that was not just painted on the wall behind reception. My director, Elaine, was one of the reasons I stayed. Elaine did not raise her voice. She did not need to. She had the kind of calm that made people nervous when they were lying. She believed in second chances, but not at the expense of the people who would have to survive them. She was also the first boss I ever had who did not mistake kindness for weakness. By the time Evan Whitaker's resume landed in my inbox, I had a good life. I had an apartment with plants I mostly kept alive. I had friends who knew my coffee order and did not think silence meant something was wrong. I had a reputation at work for being fair, direct, and difficult to manipulate. I was not the girl in the hallway anymore. That is what I told myself when I saw his name. I opened the resume. For 10 minutes, I read it like I would read anyone else's. He had the qualifications. I hated that he did, but he did. His leadership experience matched the role. His technical background was strong. He had worked at recognizable companies. The gap in his employment was noticeable, but not automatically disqualifying. The role paid a base salary of $140,000, plus bonus and stock options. Hybrid schedule, 2 days in office, 3 at home. Good benefits. Stable team. Direct path to advancement. And if he got the job, he would report to me. I sat back in my chair and looked at the ceiling. There are fantasies you have when you are 17. You imagine the person who hurt you becoming pathetic. You imagine running into them years later while you are successful and beautiful and they are miserable in some obvious way. You imagine them recognizing what they did and begging for forgiveness in public. You imagine having power over them. Then, one day, life hands you a file and says, "Here. Now, what kind of person are you?" I could have taken the interview. I could have smiled into the camera and watched him realize who I was. I could have asked him questions about conflict resolution, psychological safety, ethical leadership. I could have let him sweat. A smaller part of me wanted to. I will not pretend otherwise. But I had spent too many years becoming someone. I respected to let Evan Whitaker drag me back into being a scared girl with milk on her jeans, so I forwarded the file to Elaine and walked to her office. She looked up from her laptop. "Everything okay?" "I know one of the candidates for the senior operations role," I said. She gestured for me to sit. I sat, folded my hands in my lap, and kept my voice professional. "We went to high school together. I don't believe I can provide an unbiased second interview." Elaine studied me for a moment. She did not ask if we had dated. She did not smile. She did not make it casual. "Is this a conflict of interest?" she asked, "or something else?" That was Elaine. Always the second question. I could have told her then. I could have said, "He bullied me so badly I still remember the sound of his shoes in the hallway." But I did not want the first professional conversation about Evan to sound like revenge. So I said enough of a personal history that I should not be part of the hiring decision. Elaine nodded. No problem, she said. I'll handle the interview myself. That should have been the end of my involvement. For the rest of the day, I worked like normal. I answered emails. I reviewed a policy update. I joined a benefits call and pretended not to think about Evan sitting somewhere nearby, preparing to interview for a role that would put him under me. He probably did not know yet. That thought gave me a strange feeling. Not satisfaction exactly. More like watching a storm move toward a house where the lights were still on. The interview was scheduled for Thursday afternoon. I knew because I saw it on Elaine's calendar. I did not open the invite. I did not look for notes. I did not hover near her office when it started. I went to a conference room on the other side of the floor and reviewed compensation bands until the numbers blurred. At 3:17, Elaine sent me a message. Stop by when you have a minute. My stomach dropped before I knew why. When I walked into her office, she was standing by the window with her arms crossed. Well, she said, that was interesting. I closed the door behind me. Elaine pointed to the chair. I sat. He has the skill set, she said. I can see why recruiting liked him. He interviews well. Very polished. Very practiced. That sounded like Evan. But something happened, she continued. I waited. I mentioned your name. My heart gave one hard beat. Elaine's expression shifted, not into sympathy exactly, but into attention. I told him the role would report into your department, and that you had recused yourself from the process because you knew him from high school. I assumed maybe you were old classmates on friendly terms. I swallowed. What did he do? He went pale. I looked down at my hands. Not a little nervous, Elaine said. Pale. Then he started over-explaining. Said high school was a long time ago. Said people change. I had not asked him anything about high school. A small, ugly part of me felt glad. Not happy. Glad. There is a difference. He asked if you had said anything about him, Elaine said. I looked back up. What did you say? I told him you had only disclosed a prior connection and removed yourself from the interview process. That was true. I had done the right thing. And somehow the truth was still in the room with him. Elaine sat across from me. Now I'm asking you because his reaction was significant enough that I need context. What happened? For a second, I was 17 again. I could hear the cafeteria laughing. I could feel milk drying on denim. I could smell the cheap coconut shampoo I used the day he spat in my hair. Because I washed it 3 times after school and still felt contaminated. I almost said it was nothing. That reflex was old. Older than my confidence. Older than my career. Older than the version of me who knew better. Instead, I took a breath and told her, not everything. Not every name. Not every detail. But enough. I told her Evan had bullied me throughout high school. I told her it had been physical at times. I told her he had spat on me, hit me, humiliated me, and targeted others who were outside his social circle. I told her I had reported it once and nothing had happened because he was considered a golden child. Elaine did not interrupt. She did not tilt her head and ask whether I was sure. She did not say teenagers are cruel, as if cruelty becomes harmless when you put it in a yearbook. She listened. When I finished, her face was very still. I'm sorry, she said.
2 words. No performance.
Just belief. I had not realized how badly I still needed that until I had it. Elaine leaned back in her chair. Based on the interview, I already had concerns, she said. He gave polished answers, but every example of leadership involved him being the smartest person in the room. He did not speak well about former colleagues. He blamed his employment gap entirely on bad management and politics.
No ownership.
I said nothing. And now, she continued, given what you've shared and the way he reacted, I don't think he's the right fit for this team. There it was. No dramatic music. No slammed door. No public exposure. Just a sentence in an office. He is not the right fit. A career worth $140,000 a year plus bonus and stock quietly disappeared because of the kind of person Evan had been when he thought people like me would never matter. I should have felt triumphant. I did not. What I felt was tired. That night, I went home and made dinner. I barely ate. I sat on my couch with my laptop open, pretending to watch a show while my mind replayed Eleni's words. He went pale. I wondered what he remembered. Did he remember spitting on me? Did he remember the lunch tray? Did he remember the paper taped to my locker? Or did he only remember enough to know there might be consequences now? At 9:42 p.m., I got a LinkedIn notification. I knew before I opened it, Evan Whitaker wants to connect. I stared at the screen for a long moment, then clicked. There was a message attached. Hi, I hope you're doing well. I just wanted to reach out and acknowledge that we may not have had the best relationship back in high school. I was young and immature, and if I ever made you feel uncomfortable or disrespected, I sincerely apologize. I've grown a lot since then and would appreciate the opportunity to reconnect on a positive note. I read it once, then again, then I laughed. Not because it was funny, because it was so perfectly empty. If I've ever made you feel uncomfortable, comfortable, disrespected, it had all the warmth of a customer service template. He did not mention what he did. He did not say he was sorry for hitting me or spitting on me or making me afraid to walk down a hallway. He did not say I remember and I was wrong. He said the kind of apology a man writes when he is afraid someone has receipts. The worst part was that it sounded as I-generated. Maybe it was. Maybe he typed a prompt into a box and asked it how to apologize to a former classmate professionally. Maybe some machine gave him those soft, careful words because he could not find any real ones inside himself. I did not respond. For a while, my finger hovered over the block button. Then I closed the app. The next morning, recruiting marked him as rejected. I did not celebrate. I did, however, look him up. I am not proud of that, but I am honest enough to admit it. His LinkedIn showed he had been unemployed for almost a year. His last role had ended quietly. No announcement, no farewell post, no humble brag about pursuing new opportunities. Just a blank space where stability used to be. Facebook told a sadder story because Facebook always does. Recently divorced. Fewer photos with his children. A tagged post from his ex-wife about new beginnings. A house that looked emptier than the kind of life he used to perform for everyone. He lived about an hour from our office. About an hour from me. That made me uneasy in a way I did not expect. Old fear is strange. It does not care that you have a title now. It does not care that you have direct reports, savings, a good therapist, and a key card that opens executive conference rooms. Somewhere in me, there was still a girl who expected him to appear around a corner. For a few days, I found myself looking twice in the parking garage. Then I got angry about that. Not at him. Not exactly. The fact that his name could still rearrange my nervous system after all these years. The fact that I had done everything people tell you to do.
I moved on.
I succeeded. I became confident. I built a life. And still, one resume could make my hands go cold. That was the part nobody warns you about. Winning does not always feel like winning. Sometimes it feels like realizing how much of you had to survive before you got there. A week later, Elaine stopped by my office. Just so you know, she said, the role is moving forward with another candidate.
I nodded.
She's excellent, Elaine added. Collaborative, thoughtful, strong references from people at different levels, not just executives. That sounds good, I said. Elaine paused at the door. I also want you to know something. You handled that appropriately. I looked up. You disclosed the conflict. You removed yourself. You told the truth only when asked in a relevant context. That matters. I did not know what to say, so I said, thank you. After she left, I sat there for a minute. I thought about Mrs. Calhoun's pale yellow office. I thought about how she had asked if maybe Evan liked me. I thought about how many adults had trained me to doubt my own experience because believing me would have been inconvenient. Then I thought about Elaine, who had looked at a grown man's reaction, asked the second question, and believed the answer. Maybe that was the real revenge. Not the job, not the salary, not the bonus or the stock options or the hybrid schedule he lost. Maybe the real revenge was that I had become the kind of woman my younger self needed in the room. A woman who documents. A woman who listens. A woman who understands that power without character is just danger with a nice resume. I never replied to Evan's message. Sometimes I still think about it. There are days when a small part of me feels bad. He was unemployed, divorced, probably scared. Maybe he really had changed. Maybe he had children who needed him to find stable work. Maybe losing that opportunity hurt people who had never hurt me. I can hold all of that and still know this: one did not lie. I did not sabotage him. I did not whisper rumors or exaggerate his past. I stepped away from the process because it was the ethical thing to do. Then, when my director asked why a senior-level candidate looked like he had seen a ghost at the mention of my name, I told the truth. That is all. The truth cost him the job, not me. For years, Evan had lived in a world where his charm protected him. His money protected him. His looks protected him. His family name protected him. Adults protected him because admitting what he was would have made their lives complicated. But life is long. Longer than high school. Longer than the years when people like him think they are untouchable. One day, the person you shoved out of your way might be the person responsible for protecting the room you want to enter. And if that day comes, you had better hope the only thing they remember is your resume. Because I remembered everything. The spit, the names, the laughter, the milk on my jeans, the folded note on my locker, the counselor who did not believe me, the way I trained myself to become invisible. And when he lost that job, I did not clap. I did not message him. I did not make a post about karma. I just closed my laptop and went to bed. That was enough. Almost. Because I will admit one petty thing. After everything, after all these years, after the apology that sounded like it had been written by software and fear, after the job slipped through his fingers because his own past walked into the interview before he did, there was still one thing that annoyed me more than it should have. He still had all his hair, and somehow that felt deeply unfair